Based on past portal results, should we get excited about this portal class? Let's break down how many have hit in the last couple years in the portal cycle.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, fam? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Harris, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Really do appreciate everybody who's going to listen to this, whether you're getting in the car, YouTube, live with us, whatever it is. Thank you so much for being here. Today's episode, we are talking about the hits, the singles, so the home runs, the singles, and the strikeouts in the portal era last 2 years, and how we could use it to look at this year's portal class that's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's never too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets guaranteed if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com. Okay, let's talk about this, because I was thinking about this the other day. Wisconsin's transfer class is rated in the top 10. If you look at On3, if you look at portal rankings, this is a really well thought of portal class. A couple studs in it. Tanner Mordecai, obviously, I love Hamper. You got 5 defensive linemen. I do like the physical safeties. You got Billy Edwards Jr. Like, this is a good class. Sorry, as I'm just going to mute something on my computer here that I meant to. This is a good transfer class, but we thought kind of the same the last 2 years. Let's actually take a look at how many players in those classes have hit, and if we can get an idea of attrition rate. In other words, is there anything we can pull from those, taking a look at this year's class and saying, well, X number of players in each class don't work out. How much attrition, how much hit should we actually get from this class? Let's start here with the misses. Here's how I did this. I broke this into 4 categories. So basically the no's, like these guys didn't hit. They didn't contribute, and that could be for a lot of reasons. I'm very clear on this. It's not always on the player for sure. Sometimes it's scheme, sometimes it's fit, sometimes it is player. And some of the players out there are going to be my no category. They could still contribute. Like maybe they haven't had a chance yet. They're still on the roster, or they've been hurt, but they're still no, right? That the bottom line is, did you contribute or not? So that's my no category. Then I have what I call the rotational guys that came in, they played a lot, but they didn't really move the needle. I want to be super clear on that one too. I'm going to explain that category more when I get there. Then I have the solid starters, players who came in, gave good minutes, were good, solid contributing starters, in my opinion. And then I got the stars, the hits, the home runs. So we're going to go through them all. I have 30 transfer commits in the last 2 cycles. We're going to see how many of those hits were, or how many of those commitments were hits, how many were whiffs. Let's start with the no's, the people who either haven't yet contributed or already came and gone out of the program and really didn't help it. That's 46% of the last 2 portal classes. If you're looking at the numbers, there was 30 guys that I had transferring in. I have 14 guys in they just haven't contributed or didn't contribute list. That's a big number. That's half, basically half. Right, here's the list. And then I want to talk about a few of these guys specifically, because again, some of these players are still on the roster and could still contribute. But this is a results business, and I'm just saying up until now, who's contributed, who hasn't. So here's the no list, and I'm going to come back and highlight a few of these guys specifically. Michael Mack you remember the Air Force cornerback. Quincy Burrows, Darian Varner, Jason Maitre, Nick Evers, Brandon Lane, Joseph Griffin Jr., Joey Okla, Leighton Nelson, Tyler Van Dyke, Jackson McGowan, Tackett Curtis, Tyrell Henry, and RJ Delancey. Couple guys in here I want to highlight. Some of these players got hurt. It is like, that's nobody's fault. But if you were reviewing a recruiting class years later out of high school and there was a player, I mean, Chase Hammond, if you guys are recruiting psychos, you remember Chase Hammond was like a 6'5" receiver out of Minnesota, was always hurt and just never came to fruition. That's a recruiting. It just is what it is. It's a player that didn't contribute. So some of these injuries, like Leighton Nelson was the swing tackle brought in from Vanderbilt. He hurt his knee and he missed the entire year. Like, he will be back on the roster. He could still make an impact. Tyler Van Dyke hurt in week 3. Not his fault, but it's also not a transfer portal hit. A couple of these players are still on the roster. Like Tackett Curtis could still make an impact here. Tackett Curtis is a guy who could still easily, I mean, he was in the inside linebacker rotation last year. He just didn't play much. And when he did, it was choppy. There was a couple penalties. He's got to tone down that aggressiveness. But there's still a chance he could carve out a role for sure. Quincy Burrows is another guy could still carve out a role. Brandon Lane, a big player we talked about in last year's portal class who just wasn't able to get on the field. That's a player that could have a big role next year. I still like the size. I saw him in Platteville I thought he looked like a rotational guy. I was surprised he didn't play more. So Brandon Lane's still on the roster. Joseph Griffin Jr., the 6'4" receiver out of Boston College, still on the roster. Jackson McGowan, athletic, former 4-star tight end, was the LSU player. And we were talking about him last cycle as the type of guy who gives you some explosiveness at the tight end room if it clicks. He gives you the ability to make some circus catches. You can move him around a lot. Think that the prototype would be like a Travis Beckham, a guy that's just a jumbo receiver, essentially, playing the tight end spot. You can split him out wide. You can split him into the slot. But that's the list. Like, that's about half of the last 2 years portal acquisitions. And a lot of these guys are out of like Delancey's gone. You have guys like Darian Varner who never contributed. Nick Evers is gone. Like, there's a lot of players that for whatever reason just weren't able to contribute. So just keep some of this in mind when you're evaluating portal classes. You got to factor in attrition, and attrition could be a lot of things. Attrition could be attrition through injury. It can be attrition through not a scheme fit. It can be attrition through misidentification of talent. It could be attrition through culture and a bad fit for culture. So that's what I have in my didn't work out list. That's 46%. Let's get a couple here. Mark D says, could they possibly be targeting the wrong players? Possibly. I think you're going to see. I think you've already seen a bit of a shift this year, which I'm going to talk about in the last segment. Why I do think that rate of hits versus misses is going to come up. But I do want to go through all the hits, the misses, and what's in between first, and give us a little bit of idea about maybe how appropriately excited we should be for the transfer portal season. We're going to take a quick break there. That's my list of players that have missed. As always, this is just my list. It doesn't make it the right list. Put in the comments when I start categorizing these players. If you think one of these guys shouldn't be in one of these categories, let me know, and we'll talk about it. Again, my list is never the right list. Ours is never the perfect list. It's just my list. But I love talking about this stuff, and I love getting your feedback on it. So let me know. Coming up next, I'm going to talk about the guys who I think have been either solid starters or rotational guys. I was talking about this in the Discord, and there's a couple players specifically that guys like JB have pushed back on against me. So I'm curious if anyone else has the same thoughts I do there. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Rocket Money. Rocket Money's awesome because they help do the dirty work for you financially. Get in there, find the subscriptions. Listen, we're busy people. We're building forts for our kids. We're washing the dishes. We're changing the oil in the car, which I know how to do, by the way. We are building pallet forts, and we are mowing the lawn and learning how to crochet. We're busy people. We're busy. Rocket Money gets in there. They get dirty. They find the subscriptions that you forgot about that are hanging on like a bad in-law, and they get rid of those things. And it's happened to me. Not the bad in-law thing, the subscriptions. So Rocket Money is a finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together into one place, one cohesive unit, whether it's subscription, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has helped over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions. That is a lot of Jerry Rice rookie cards, y'all. For me, it just is about cleaning out some of those unwanted subscriptions that I forget about. It is a great financial reminder. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Okay, let's get into the next category here. And again, let me know in the comments if you disagree with where I have any of these players slotted. My next category, I'm calling this the rotational guys, the guys who have stepped in, they played maybe a decent amount of snaps, maybe a lot of snaps, maybe started some games, but maybe didn't really move the needle. I want to be clear, like, that's important too. Like, playing reps is important. Giving solid snaps is important because it means you might not have the depth behind you in those spots. Like if he's not coming in there and giving solid reps, for example, the guy behind them might even be even worse. Like in baseball, it's the 4th or 5th starter that's eating innings. That guy is still valuable, even though he's not the guy that's going to be starting a playoff opener for you. Here's my list of guys that I have as solid, decent rotational guys, okay? And this is 20% of the last 2 portal classes, by the way. So if you remember, what I categorized as misses or haven't contributed yet is 48% of those 2 portal classes. This one where I'm just naming kind of solid, decent rotation guys is 20%. So we're already up to 68% of those rotation pieces. I have John Pius, Leon Lowry, Sebastian Cheeks, who still has time to get better. Like, I thought he flashed. I thought he gave you some stuff. He hasn't played a ton of snaps. I think if he played more snaps last year, he would have already been elevated a tier in my rankings. Braedyn Locke. I know people can go a lot of ways on Braedyn Locke. You needed him on this roster. You lost Tyler Van Dyke. You had nobody else. He did give you rotational minutes. It wasn't clean. There's a reason he moved on. There's a reason they went back to the portal to find another guy, right? We all agree it needs to get a lot better. But if he wasn't on this roster, we would have been playing a true freshman. And I think it would have been worse. I think we could have lost games in that middle stretch to Rutgers, Northwestern. So Purdue, I have him in this rotational category. I have Jeff Petroyski there. If you remember him from last year, Michigan State transplant, came over, played a couple hundred snaps. He was okay. Again, one of those pieces that you slot in and he eats some reps because there wasn't enough depth in the linebacker room last year. I have CJ Williams in this category. I thought solid, a little injury prone, had some flashes, but definitely didn't live up to the hype or the hope that we had. Let me know if you disagree with any of those categories there. I'm going to check the chat really quick. Let's see. Yeah, I'll do actually bang out the chat at the end because I don't want to completely lose my spot. Okay, let's go into my next category. This is what I'm going to call solid starters, decent starters, guys who came in and helped improve a position. I have Tanner Mordecai. I have Nathaniel Vakos, Bryson Green, Jake Renfro, and Jaheim Thomas. Now, really quickly on this, again, think of our quarterback situation. Tanner Mordecai coming in, I think, gave you some stability, some mobility there. He was a leader. Vakos was bad this year, but he was good last year. Okay, let's just be super clear. I think you average those out and you get decent overall. I thought Jaheim Thomas probably didn't live up to expectations this year, but he was still a solid inside linebacker at a spot that needed some depth. Bryson Green, I thought was solid. Jake Renfro, to me, I think next year he might elevate even another level. I thought it was a little up and down this year, but he had been out for a long time. I think it's a solid starting center. To me, that's that category there. That's 16% of the guys. So I've got Mordecai, Vakos, Bryson Green, Renfro, and Jaheim Thomas is just like solid starters. And let me know if you guys disagree or agree with any of that. Steve Kneebone says Jaheim Thomas is overrated. I think he was fine, right? I think he was fine. So again, if you factor all this in and you're looking at, we brought in 30 bodies, right? And we're already at like 85% of the bodies accounted for. And again, you can certainly shift these lists around a little bit if you want to bump Vakos down one or Bryson Green around or CJ Williams around. You can certainly do that. But my bigger point is we've already gone through the bulk of our portal imports, and most of them don't really move the needle, which brings me to something I've talked about a lot. You still got to do it through the high school ranks. Now, you can also do it better in the portal. It's not an excuse to not hit on guys. You still have to do your homework. You still have to find culture fits. You have to do a better job of, I think, targeting guys who fit your scheme. I think that's been a problem too, like finding guys, just getting them in here and then not really knowing what to do with them at times. I talked about that with linebackers last year. Yeah, I said, and I was wrong, by the way, completely. I was wrong. I thought the linebackers would be good last year, but my one concern was, how are they going to fit all these pieces together? It might take a little while. Well, yeah, it took a little while. It took the whole year, and they still didn't. I feel like they still didn't fully get it. They still didn't fully figure out the right recipe at linebacker. So that's a risk, right? It's a risk to get these pieces and try to fit them all together. But it's a risk for every team, and Wisconsin has to do better there. But ultimately, you still got to get the bulk of your team through high school recruiting. It's too difficult in the portal, and when you take a look at it and you look at the numbers and you look at the people who've come in and you look at the people who haven't worked out, it's not a winning formula, right? The minuses outweigh the pluses. It's not a winning formula. So that's where they're heading. We like the 24 class. We like the 25 class. They're going to have to really rely on those guys more and more. And hopefully as those guys help, as they grow, as they fill out, as you develop them and you keep them, you got to keep them now. But as you do that, hopefully the portal is more of a fit in rather than an overhaul piece. Okay, let's get some comments now. Let's get some of these comments. Dominic asks, who do you think is the most impactful transfer this year? And then after comments, I'm going to get to the guys who I think they've hit kind of either home runs or solid doubles or triples in the portal. I'm going to do that next on Locked On Badgers. Dominic asks, who do you think is the most impactful transfer this year? It's the quarterback. It's always going to be the quarterback. It's Billy Edwards Jr., just because he's an oversized piece to any football team. You're adding a chess. In chess, you're adding a queen back onto the board after you lost him. I would say outside of most impactful non-quarterback division, it's Koziel, a tight end that caught 94 passes last year. More quickness than you think. There's when you go watch him on film, he can turn north and south really quick. He's got great hands. He's 6'7", a low drop rate on high volume. He's not going to catch 94 passes for the Badgers, but this is a guy that NFL scouts already have on the radar. I think those are the two obvious guys. If you take those guys out, who is the most impactful transfer? Curious what you guys think. I think Peterson on the defensive line, the Tulane kid, I like some of the burst he has. He's already 6'4", 300, 310. So that's a player that I look at as a really nice piece, a really nice addition. I like Hamper a lot, the receiver. Already productive, good size, good hands, enough speed. I think those guys come to mind immediately to me. A couple of the other defensive linemen I feel like are more pieces for just to get you solid, depth pieces to help get you a little better against the run, which you need. That's really important. But I don't know if I see stars in that group outside of, I think Peterson has some ability. Perk down the road has some ability, I think. I think that's where I'd go. The linebacker they added out of Kentucky is really interesting to me because his physical skill set is really impressive. If you go back and watch him in high school, he's got a clip in high school where he's running a running back down the sideline. He looks like a puma chasing down a gazelle, right, in a Net Geo show. So I like his upside, but he's got to prove it. He hasn't been able to put it together yet. That's a lottery ticket you've taken a chance on. Those are the guys I would go with. They got to add more at cornerback. Got to really, really desperately add more at cornerback. A couple more questions here. Could they be, Mark D says, could they possibly be targeting the wrong players? I think I talked about that already. Yeah, I think so. And I'm hoping this year where they've gone after more players, I feel like from lower areas with production. I think maybe you're getting a hungry type of player that way, but time's going to tell. Time is definitely going to tell on that. Robert Sorensen brings up Isaac Ham. And he also says I still like Tackett. Yeah, I'm definitely not writing off Tackett. Again, his inclusion on my list of hasn't really contributed yet is simply that. He hasn't really contributed yet. There's still a piece inside of him. Like there's still that guy that every defense in the country wanted, that LSU wanted, that USC wanted, that Georgia wanted, that Wisconsin wanted. That guy's still there. They just got to figure out a way to unlock it. And he's got to get healthy and better. Again, remember last year he was really working back off. He's really been hurt his entire career. That's the other thing with Tackett that people need to realize. He went to USC. He got banged up. They played him throughout the year. They didn't really let him recover. Came to Wisconsin, got banged up again. He's got to get healthy. And you can't get better if you don't get reps. You can't get better if you don't practice. He's got to get healthy. So that's what I'm hoping here for that. Zane says, I think the program is trending down. It's going to get worse. We'll be lucky if the Badgers go 3-9. Zane, you're killing me. You're killing me, Zane. But you might be right. Might be right. Eli Davis, cornerback room needs to be improved. Oh, my gosh, yes. The cornerback room desperately needs to be improved. Now, we're still waiting on Hallman. I guess we're still kind of waiting on what happens with Lucas. I think Lucas is gone. That's my feel on it. That's my opinion. I don't think he's going to be. It's one of those situations where if there's this much smoke about it and this much entering the portal and the thoughts of Miami, and Miami's already kind of talking about it, generally there's fire there when there's this much smoke. I don't think he's coming back, and it really hinges on Rico. If you get Rico back, you can kind of cobble stuff together around him, and it's still not going to be a strength. Right, it's still going to be problematic. If Rico goes, man, better get to the passer quick. The pass rush better get better. JB says we hit on 4 or 5 guys out of 31. That's horrible. Yeah, it's not a good enough hit rate. I think we hit on more than 4 or 5, though. Again, I have a list of players who I think have been solid. I consider those hits. They're just not home runs. But it all depends on how you look at it and which way you would go with a couple of these players here. JB also says you're not factoring in who was on the team, who got replaced, how much we paid them, and did it force anybody else out. No, that's fair. When you bring a portal guy in, now that also doesn't mean those guys would have been better. Let's be clear on both sides of this coin. Tyree Walker comes in and he gets reps instead of maybe Dylan Jones. Would Dylan Jones have been better than 4.5 yards per carry this year? Maybe not. I don't know. I like Dylan Jones actually, so I think this may not be the best example to back up my point. But my point is, like, there's a lot of these guys you're bringing in because you don't have depth there, because the other guys aren't ready to play. I think that was true at defense line, at cornerback, at quarterback, and a couple other spots. So I think that cuts both ways there. A couple more comments here. Robert Sorensen, Haywood, Dupree, Jones, Allegro, Renfro, Dylan Johnson, Heiberger playing next year. Fickell's brought in talent. I love those young guys. Yeah, they got to play now. And not all of those guys will hit either, but I do think we already feel good about Haywood, Dupree. I like Jones. Allegro's good. I think Renfro will get better. Heiberger has a werewolf-type frame. I think the team is, from a talent standpoint, I think there's better days ahead, but You got to use it the right way. You got to scheme it the right way. The schedule's rough next year, and you do have to do a better job in the portal, which is what I'm trying to illustrate in today's show. Let's take a quick second here, and I'm going to get back and tell you which players I think they absolutely hit on in the portal, why I think they did, despite a few people maybe pushing back on me there. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for friends of the show over at FanDuel. Let's go, FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs. This is the place we go to on the Locked On Network. It's the official sportsbook of the NFL. The NFL playoffs are coming up. Fastest, easiest, simplest, quick, easy user interface. If you get paid, you actually get your money back. Now, unlike loaning your money to your cousin, you ain't seeing that again. You know that, right? You're going to go try to get that money back, and Cousin Joe's going to be like, nah, dude, no, what? Huh? Have a Hot Pocket. And you're going to have a Hot Pocket because he's family. It is what it is. FanDuel's not like that. FanDuel's not going to Hot Pocket you. You're going to get your money when you win. It's fast. It's easy. It's simple. Parlay, spreads, futures, teasers. Great time to do it. NBA's going on. College basketball and college football playoffs. Are you kidding me? The NFL, it's all there. We're on FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch again over at FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Okay, let's talk about the hits. Let's talk about this. And you guys tell me which of these guys you maybe disagree with me on or agree with me on. I know some people in Discord are pushing back. Here are my 5 hits that I think they just nailed in the portal. Tyree Walker. Listen, you brought him in to be a bowling ball. He gave you 860 yards. He gave you 10 touchdowns. 10 touchdowns was 7th in the Big Ten last year. 4.5 per carry. 864 yards was 10th in the Big Ten. That's super solid. That's a really solid year, and that's exactly what you brought him in here for. Sometimes expectations matter. You're not bringing in Tyree Walker to be Ron Dane or Adrian Peterson. You're bringing him in to give you 800 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 4.5 per carry. That's exactly what he gave you. I think they got exactly what they wanted out of him. Elijah Hills, absolute hit. Absolute hit, Elijah Hills. The most disruptive defense lineman on the roster this year. Sometimes the only lighthouse we would look at in the calm sea of no pass rush, you'd be Elijah Hills, and then I'd play the Hills Are Live at the Sound of Music meme. Yeah, he's absolute hit. I actually thought Lane would be more of an impact guy last year, and it ended up being Elijah Hills. So that was a hit. Will Pauling, obviously. Even on a down year last year, Will Pauling had 74 receptions the year before, easily the most receptions in that 2-year span for the Badgers. Huge hit. Slot weapon, tough, good guy. Will Pauling, absolute hit in the portal. Nizer Forkreen. I think that's an absolute hit. You bring in a cornerback who gave you almost 700 snaps last year, the 3rd highest graded defender per Pro Football Focus, great tackler. That's a great, if you could get that this year in the portal, if you could go find another Forkreen, that'd be a home run addition. You would slot him in immediately as the 2 and maybe the 1 if Holman's gone. That was an absolute home run addition to get a guy who can play 1 year and start the entire year at cornerback and give you solid cornerback play. Yeah, that's a great hit. And then Joe Huber. I think people, I said this before, I really think people underestimate the impact Joe Huber had on this team. Durable, versatile, tough, really tough SOB, sound technical blocker, great experience, played 1,500 snaps across the course of 2 seasons. Like, you got a rock steady, good college player that it was a plug and play fit for 2 years on the offensive line. You don't replace that easily. So those are my 5 guys. I consider those guys kind of home runs or great hits, however you want to phrase it. Pauling, Hills, Walker, Forkreen, and Huber. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree on that one. Badger Boardmouth says Huber is better than Renfro. I agree. I think Renfro has another step because you got to remember how much time Renfro had missed, basically like a couple years of football. And this was his first year. He had the LSU game, but this is his first year really kind of knocking off the rust. I think he could be better next year, but up to this point, I think Huber as well. Bo Dragon says the O-line didn't measure up. I thought the O-line was fine. It depends on what you consider measuring up. If you look at, if you want to go look at analytics, Wisconsin's pass protection offensive line was one of the better units in the country. I think run blocking wasn't great, but I also kind of wonder, it goes back to, well, how many people did teams have in the box against us? I don't think it was the easiest job run blocking on this offense this year is my point. I think they were fine. I don't think they were great. I don't think it was an elite unit. It wasn't prototypical Wisconsin elite unit. And I actually think I expected a little bit more, but I also don't think the offensive line was a problem. I really, really don't. No more questions here. Nick Flav says, since when is 4.5 yards per carry good at Wisconsin? No, it's a solid point. It's a solid point. I don't know if good or not. Like, again, he's not Melvin Gordon or some of those guys. I don't know. I think they brought him in to be that, and that's what he was, but I can respect it if people think there was a lack of efficiency there. And I do think it's fair to point out if you had taken Tywee away and replaced all those reps with Cade Yakimelli or Dylan Jones, would you get the same production? Probably, quite frankly. So I think that's a fair point from Nick. Certainly a fair point there. A couple more people in here. Walker was average. Nick Flav again. Tywee Walker was fine, but barely. Yeah, a lot of people don't disagree. A lot of people disagree with me on my Tywee take, which is totally fine. Again, this is just my list. It doesn't make it the list. Eli Davis says reason Rico got burned was no pass rush. They had all day to get open. Yeah, Rico's not the problem. Now I think Rico regressed. There was a couple moments, like there was a double move against Nebraska that I feel like Rico should eat up, and he got kind of burned on it. Dropped a couple picks, but Rico is definitely not the problem. I agree. The lack of pass rush is a much, much bigger issue here. Let's see. Okay, let's see if there's any other comments in here. JB says Tywee's 864 yards is the worst Badgers season, our worst Badger number in a season since 10 years ago. That's also last time we had a lead back at 4.5 yards per carry or less. Who was that back, out of curiosity, 10 years ago? I don't actually know. It's not like it's not a catch-all or anything. I'm curious actually who was that guy. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. I feel I'll say this. I definitely get that argument, and I could move him down to the solid starters. I'm not moving him anywhere below that, though. Anywhere below. Again, he was 7th in the conference in touchdowns, 10th in total yards. Like, that's fine. So, yeah, maybe it's Dare. Aaron says it's Dare Ogbowale. That might fit. I don't think he ran for 1,000 yards, so that would make sense. Okay. Yeah, Bo Dragon says Tywee has half the talent of a Melvin Gordon. Probably a quarter of it, but that's most running backs. Most running backs have like a quarter of the talent of Melvin Gordon. Patrick Johnson says, thoughts on if we continue to run from the gun? I think we will. I mean, that's what Grimes has done a lot of. And that's what most teams do. Most teams are running from the gun. So I don't think that's the problem. He's going to run more outside zone, which I think is going to be a nice fit for our running backs. He's going to use more motion, which I think we all welcome. But I don't think you're going to see a big shift away, Patrick, from running from the gun, just based on what we've seen from Grimes, what we've seen in his past. And quite frankly, what we've seen from college football, what we've seen from nobody really runs from the gun anymore. That's not a thing that happens. Eli said it's Dare. Dare ran for 819 that year. Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too high on Tywee. I think it's certainly fair. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. Y'all are amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big picture, they got to get better at identifying and getting talent in the portal. Absolutely have to do it. If you're around tomorrow, we are doing our giveaway show. I'm excited for it. Again, it's just a way to say thank you to everybody in the community. We are absolutely stoked. Rajiv will be there. I think Justin will be there to give away a bunch of cool stuff, Badger gear, autographs from the GOAT. Speaking of Melvin Gordon, let's see if I don't have it. I moved my helmet. Speaking of Melvin Gordon, I have an awesome full-size Melvin Gordon helmet we're giving away. So that'll be at 9 Central Standard tomorrow, I believe. I'll definitely put it out there on Twitter so everyone has the link. But I would love for people to join in. It's a fun time. We're giving away free stuff. Just Badger trivia, and it's a thank you. So this is a preemptive thank you for being part of this community. I hope you can join tomorrow and get some free stuff. On Wisconsin, when you're done, you go check out Locked On College Football, Locked On Big Ten, and I'll see you here tomorrow. Let's go.